Video games. Do you guys ever wonder the effects video games can have on your brain or your actions? I like to think about it every now and again whenever I'm playing by myself or with friends. This can relate to you all because a lot of people our age are playing video games, and games are being developed that simulate the occupation you want after college. Personally, I've played video games for a majority of my life, and I've actually researched this topic a lot in the last 4 years. Video games can influence a lot about you. To dive into this topic, we need to learn how video games can affect your cognitive functions, how they affect your actions, and finally, how video games can be used in the classroom. So first, let's talk about how video games affect your brain. Video games can help develop your cognitive function, according to a 2019 journal article by NCBI.gov by Simone Kuhn, Jorgen Gallinat, and Anna Masharik. In Effects of Computer Gaming on Cognition, they state video gaming can help develop your cognitive function. They wanted to make their own test to see if they can try to figure out more instead of just cognitive function is a very broad subject. But in their conclusion, they say that we lack the current mechanisms and understanding of the brain to understand how it specifically affects your brain. But thankfully, we at least know it can help to some degree. So next, let's see how video games affect your actions. There's been a debate or a lot of controversy these last few years about violence in video games and how they can cause violent acts. It's not surprising that video games do have violence in them. Call of Duty, for example, puts you in a warlike scenario, and Grand Theft Auto is, well, Grand Theft Auto, lets you commit pretty much every crime under the sun. According to an article from 2010 on health.harvard.edu by Harvard Health Publishing called Violent Video Games and People, they give us two main viewpoints on this debate. The first viewpoint says that video games are the main influence for violent acts, and the reason for this is because they are interactive and they encourage role playing. Second, another viewpoint they gave is, they described it as a more nuanced view, and it does not say that it is not directly influencing violence, but they try to categorize the impact of these video games into categories, and in my opinion, I don't think you can generalize these events, and every case is different. An article from last year on Dana.org by Philip M. Beaufry called Do Violent Video Games Lead to Violence? He gives us his viewpoint with neuroethics. He states that there is no hard evidence to connect violent video games and violence in the world, and outright blaming video games for violent acts is distracting us from the real causes of violence, like psychological disorders or discrimination. So now let's look into see how video games can be used in the classroom. Video games can be used for education, according to a 2019 article on knowledgeablemagazine.org by Kendall Powell called What Electronic Games Can Teach Us. She writes about how video games can help us in class. She knows that people our age are playing video games, and certain video games can help us for certain functions. Tetris, for example, you will organize two-dimensional blocks, which is, well, good for organizing. And actually, action video games can help us with selective attention. But this does not mean that all video games should be used in a classroom setting. I don't think we'll be playing Grand Theft Auto in class anytime soon. There are also, like I said before, simulation games that help us with our occupation we want. According to a 2020 database article by Ryan Chow and Matthew Cheong called All Fun and Games, Exploring the Positive Effects Educational Video Games Can Have on Medical Learners, they look into how video games can help medical students. They say games like League of Legends on the computer can help with communication skills, which is vital for people who want to become doctors and nurses. And mouse clicking games help you with hand-eye coordination and dexterity skills, which is good for operating rooms. They say in their conclusion that medical students can become a lot better surgeons if they play these video games and immerse themselves as becoming real surgeons. But there is no certainty that everyone can use video games because we all don't want to be doctors. So in summary, we know video games can help us with our cognitive function, but we don't know how specifically. There are claims that violent video games make us become violent, but there's no hard evidence to support it. And we also know that there are some video games that can help you in the classroom, but it can't be for everyone. So there's a lot of uncertainty about video games, but in my personal opinion, I don't think we need to study video games and know that they're beneficial. I've been through enough hardships in my life to know that video games have always been there to help me as a distraction or just to calm down and rethink about whatever I'm facing with. Thank you for listening.